Hi guys, Barry Casson here. Today I'm going to tell you a story about Chuck Berry and the riot at the Savile Theatre in London in 1967. I was a part of that, and it was a pretty special event, so I thought I'd tell you that story. It's in my book, How to Become Who You're Meant to Be. But first, just a little bit of backstory. Back in the late 60s, I was a member of a band in Victoria called Bobby Falls and the Strangers. We won a battle of the bands here. We had two tenors and sax. We're kind of a big-ass, kick-ass band, right? We always wanted to make it. Bands always think about that. And at one point, I remember I went to England for about 5 or 6 weeks to check out the music scene. It was one of those things where I just wanted to get out of town, do something, and see where we were. Anyway, I checked out the music scene in London, and I thought, we had a shot. So I came back, and all I had to do now was convince six other guys to quit their jobs, leave their wives, and go to England. Yeah, easy thing, right? So we met, we talked about it. The guys talked to the wives, and eventually we all agreed we were going to take a stab at this. We gave ourselves like 4 months, I think it was. If we hadn't made it in 4 months, we're all going to come back, right? So we did it. We packed up everything, left everything, got on a train and headed for London. We got to Halifax and then we flew over, I think it was. Anyway, we got to London and we got ourselves an agent, a guy named Roy Tempest, who was pretty big in London with bands and stuff. So we got ourselves an agent who worked us to death, I got to tell you. We played every venue you can think of from one end of England to the other. And in those days, they had these huge ballrooms called Mecca or Locarno ballrooms. And they were huge. And at each end, they had a revolving stage. So you could have a band, and when they finished, the stage would revolve and another band would come out. Same at the other end. It was pretty wild stuff, right? So anyway, we had done our bit. We were starting to travel around London, getting written up in magazines, Melody Maker magazine, and a few of the big magazines. We got to play at the Cavern in Liverpool, which is pretty exciting. Anyway, things were just starting to rock with a, hey, we're making it. The money was good. We were working ourselves hard, but we were making it. And then after about 3 months, the British government said to the guys, to us, they said, okay, your married guys can only send so much money home to their wives. I don't know why they put some kind of a cap on it, which was a real problem for the three married guys, the three horn players. So after about 3 months, it was hard on them and they decided they had to pack it in and leave. That left four of us. There was myself on drums, David Foster on keyboard, Mike Stymast on bass, and Bobby Falls, our singer, who also played a bit of rhythm and guitar. So we thought, what the hell are we going to do here? So anyway, just at that time, our agent said, well, look, guys, I'm bringing over these Motown stars from Detroit, the black artists, the Motown stuff. And he said, you guys know that music better than the Brits. I'd like to team you up with them. We said, sure. Who'd you have in mind? And he said, well, how about Chuck Berry? And we went, Chuck Berry, holy cow, this is pretty cool. So we met Chuck. We rehearsed with him at the Whiskey A Go-Go in London, got our act together, and then hit the road. And it was pretty big. It was like Riots and Guard Dogs. I mean, huge. Chuck Berry was absolutely huge in those days over there. But this one gig, the Riot, the one I'm talking about, happened at the Saville Theatre. Now, what happened? Chuck had been booked there along with some other big acts, and everybody was there that night. The Rolling Stones, the Beatles, the Mamas and the Papas. Oh, I think the Four Tops were there. Who else? There was Sandy Shaw and Chris Farlow, big names in Europe at the time, in England. Yeah, a lot of big names. Anyway, so we go to the Savile Theatre. And to start the show off, there was a guy named Del Shannon. You maybe remember him. He had a big hit called My Little Runaway. So he opened the show, My Little Runaway. And we're backstage. And then following him was the Drifters with Benny King, like Under the Boardwalk. So they go on doing that. Now you got to remember something here. The theater was comprised of two groups of people. There was what they call mods and what they call rockers. Mods were the skinheads, and the rockers were the motorcycle gang type. They mixed like oil and water. They didn't mix, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, they go on, the Drifters go on, and after him, there was a guy named Alan Price. He used to be the keyboard player for the Animals. He left the Animals and created his own group called the Alan Price Set. So he went on to do the next act. And while he was playing, they started throwing stuff at the stage. Like, these guys didn't want warm-up acts. All they wanted was Chuck Berry. And we saw him get hit in the mouth with something. They were throwing everything at the stage. And somebody said it was a spark plug. I know he was bleeding, like, really cool, bleeding and playing. And we thought, oh God, this is terrific. We're up next, But because we were called the Canadians at that time, but we were Chuck's band as far as the audience was concerned. So we got up to do our bit, and they let us off lightly. They threw a few cigarette packets, and I always admired our singer Bobby Falls because he was right out front, and anything that was throwing, he was going to get it first, right? So they let us go. They said, "Okay, you guys are cool. We're willing." Clap, clap, clap. And then Chuck comes out. Well, Chuck gets up, and the theater goes wild, absolutely wild. And he's doing, I think he did Maybelline and Johnny Be Good or two. After the second number, a couple of guys or one guy tried to jump onto the stage. You know, well, with mods and rockers and all this, it was tense to begin with. And when this guy jumped on the stage, the theater manager panicked and he brought down the metal curtain. It's like it's a curtain, but it's made of metal so that nobody can get on stage, right? And when he brought that down, boom, it was riot time. 50 police were called out. You could hear stuff banging off the curtain. They were throwing everything they could at the stage. Anyway, it was a big write-up the next day in the Daily Mirror magazine. 1,000 rock fans rioted theater. And it was cool because it wasn't cool, but we were a part of this, right? So we're backstage and we're kind of worried at this point, because now what do? They're going to storm the stage. They're going to come around the back. Are we all going to get mugged? What? So anyway, it settled down. After about half hour, 45 minutes, it settled down. And everybody had left the theater. There was nobody in the theater. They pulled up the curtain. And I remember I was on stage. I was on the right packing up my drums, and David Foster was over here packing up his organ. And we were just the two of us. And I looked up. There was these box seats, And I looked up in the left box seat. There was a guy just sitting there rocking back and forth, watching us pack up like this. And I looked up and he just waved, and so I waved, and I thought, wait a minute, is that who I think it is? And so I shuffled over to where Dave was. I said, Dave, take a look at that left box seat. Is that who I think it is? Dave looked up, the guy waved. It was Paul McCartney. It was Paul McCartney who was still in the theater. And every time I talk to David, it's like, what happened? Why was he still there? I can't figure it out. Was it he didn't want to get out? He couldn't get out. He was waiting for a route out of the place. I don't know what it was. But like I say, the Stones, the Beatles, the Tom Jones, everybody was there that night. So it was pretty terrific. It's something you remember for the rest of your life. Anyway, that's just one story from my travels when we're touring with Chuck Berry. We also went on to do Bo Diddley and the Drifters. And anyway, I'll tell you about that later. But I thought you might like that story. It's all in my book, How to Become Who You're Meant to Be, okay, which is on Amazon. It's on Kindle, and it's also Bolin Books locally too. I'm doing more now on trying to speak on the book. I've done a number of speaking presentations to different groups on the book because the book is really designed to get to young people, high school students, college students, because I run into so many people this day that talk about their kids and they say they don't know what they want to do. And I'm hoping that my life and my experiences that are in my book might help them to sort of take charge and identify their gifts, their talents, and work on that first before you do anything else. Because I always believe that whatever you're gifted with, that's what you should be working at in life. Because as was it Confucius said, do the thing you love and you'll never work a day in your life. You know what I mean? Anyway, that's the story. I'm going to have lots of other stories later from the book. Thank you for watching this. If you need to contact me, my website is just barrycasson.com. Okay, and I hope you've enjoyed this story. There'll be more to come. If you like it, please pass it on, share it with your friends or whatever. And I thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you very much.